Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving right into one of the absolute most confusing everyday things that cat owners deal with. Picture this, you're sitting on the couch, right? You're petting your cat, and they start affectionately licking your hand, purring away, just completely blissed out. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, chomp, they bite you. It feels totally unprovoked, entirely contradictory, and honestly, it leaves so many of us just scratching our heads. Well, today, we are decoding this whole lick-then-bite mystery, and what we found is actually fascinating.
So you really have to ask yourself when this happens, is this just a mixed signal? I mean, is your cat simply being a bit of a jerk? Or is there actually a profound hidden message here? Could this be a secret language that we, as humans, are just completely missing?
The stakes here are actually incredibly high. Believe it or not, by pulling away in those moments, you might be pushing your cat away at the exact second they want you closer. Because we don't naturally speak cat, most of us unknowingly damage that bond by reacting poorly right when our pet is actively trying to connect with us. We pull away in shock, or maybe we get annoyed, and we completely shatter a deeply important moment for them.
It really all comes down to this massive disconnect. To us, to human perception, this feels like affection immediately followed by sudden aggression. It feels like a total betrayal. But in the cat's reality, this is actually affection followed by communication. What we think is happening is just completely at odds with what their biology is dictating. By the time we wrap up this explainer, the final answer to why they do this is going to totally change how you view your feline best friend.
Okay, let's start with the lick itself, because a lick is never just a kiss. It all comes down to this biological concept called allogrooming. Basically, that's the term for the grooming of one cat by another. And out in the wild, cats do not hand this out freely. It acts as a highly selective social currency. A cat will groom a kitten, a sibling, or a mate they've spent years bonding with, sure, but they will never groom a cat they distrust. So, when your cat licks you, they are intentionally spending their absolute most valuable social currency right on you.
And almost no one talks about this, but it turns out that licking is actually a scent-blending ritual. First, they deposit their own scent directly onto your skin. Then, that rough little tongue pulls your scent onto them. And this results in the creation of a shared family smell. In the cat world, a shared scent is exactly how a group identifies its own members. They are literally blending your smells together to chemically and biologically mark you as part of their family pack.
So the crucial takeaway here is the massive emotional weight behind that rough little tongue. It's not just some casual sign of affection. That action is a profound declaration of belonging. It translates directly to, you belong to me and I belong to you. When you realize that, the sudden bite that follows feels even more confusing, right? I mean, why on earth would you bite someone you just claimed as family?
Well, let's look at how this builds up in your cat's physical body. Sometimes, the bite is simply what's called petting-induced overstimulation. You see, the skin along a cat's back and tail is just packed with highly sensitive nerve endings. When you pet them, or even when they're repeatedly licking you, a sensory charge starts to build up, slowly crossing this invisible threshold from pleasure right into discomfort. When it tips over that line, the bite acts as a physical release valve for that overwhelming feeling.
But the amazing thing is, your cat almost always warns you before that threshold is actually crossed. You just have to know how to read the physical signs. Watch for a slow, low tail flick. Notice if their ears swivel back or maybe flatten slightly. Look to see if the skin along their spine gives a quick little ripple, or if their whole body suddenly just goes a little tense. To a cat, these are not subtle signals. They are practically shouting. If you learn to read these, you can pause just a half second before that threshold is crossed, give them some space, and avoid the bite entirely. And doing this actually deepens the trust between you two.
But to truly understand why the lick and the bite are so intrinsically linked, we actually have to travel back in time. When we look closely at the mother's imprint, a whole new picture emerges. Think about minute 1 of a kitten's life. The mother licks them constantly to clean them and stimulate blood flow. By week 1, she starts using gentle nips to move them around, correct them, and keep them close and safe. So years later, the lick and the bite are triggered in your adult cat's brain as a single unified safety program. It is literally the very first emotional language that kitten ever learned.
I want to let that sink in for a moment. The lick and the bite are two halves of the same act of love. In your cat's mind, there is absolutely no contradiction here. There's no confusion, and there is certainly no aggression. They are treating you the exact way they were treated when they felt safest and most cared for by their mother, way back before their eyes were even fully open. Now, this brings us to another reason the bite might happen. especially if you're in the middle of a play session. It comes down to bite inhibition. This is the crucial boundary training that kittens learn from their littermates through a pretty brutal but super effective feedback loop. If one kitten bites too hard, the other kitten shrieks, quits the game, and playtime ends instantly. Soft bites keep the fun going, hard bites end it. But kittens taken from their litter too early often miss out on finishing this training, so they grow up with a playstyle that is just a little rougher than they realize.
So how do you know if that sudden bite is just play? Well, the signs of playful biting are actually incredibly clear once you know what to look for. The bite will be quick and light, their body will stay loose and relaxed, their eyes will be soft, their ears will stay facing forward, and there will be absolutely no hissing or growling. That is not a cat at their limit. That's a cat inviting you into a game that makes total sense in their world.
Which brings us to a critical correction we can make. When a cat playfully bites, the typical human error is to pull back and scold them. But to a playing cat, that just reads as confusing rejection. The feline fix here isn't discipline, it's redirection. Just keep a toy or a wand within reach. If they bite, let them sink all that energy into the toy instead of your fingers. You aren't shutting down their game, you're simply handing them a much better opponent.
So, okay, now we understand the physical limits, the mother's deep imprint, and the dynamics of playtime. But honestly, none of that fully explains the one specific scenario we opened with, the bite that abruptly ends a super calm, focused grooming session. There is one final secret we need to uncover here.
And here it is, closure. This is the ultimate paradigm-shifting secret of cat behavior. When two bonded cats groom each other in the wild, the bite is how one of them signals that the moment has reached its natural end. It is a precise, deliberate punctuation mark. It signals that the grooming ritual is now completely finished.
So let's completely reframe how we view this interaction. The bite is not rejection, it's not anger, and it is definitely not a mistake. The bite is a natural end to a chapter of trust and closeness. The cat doing the biting isn't being rude at all. They are being incredibly precise. They gave you their trust, their grooming, and their closeness, and the bite simply marks where that chapter gracefully closes. The quiet truth here is that the cats who seem the most unpredictable and difficult are very often just the ones whose clear vocabulary of closure has been misunderstood by humans for the longest time. They aren't difficult, they've just been waiting to be heard.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question to ask ourselves. Next time your cat pulls you into their family ritual, blends their scent with yours, and then closes their mouth around your hand, will you listen? Will you realize they are just telling you in the only language they know that the moment is beautifully complete? Because once you start really listening, that biting tends to soften entirely on its own. Your cat finally feels heard, and your bond can permanently deepen. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.